this study in the BRAF V600E-mutated metastatic colorectal cancer patients had been previously reported with a response rate endpoint. Now, this is a really interesting new mechanism through the FDA. It was called Project FrontRunner. And the goal of this from the FDA was to say, can we bring more innovative therapies into first-line setting? Now, Project FrontRunner said if you can show an improvement in response rate in a first-line study, there's an opportunity to get accelerated approval that then would potentially convert to full approval for the regimen on the basis of a progression-free survival and more traditional endpoints at some later date. So that's why we had a prior report of BREAKWATER where we showed that the response rate was indeed higher in the patients treated with encorafenib, cetuximab, and FOLFOX compared to standard of care therapy in first-line BRAF V600E-mutated metastatic colorectal cancer. And at ASCO, we were then able to share the progression-free survival and the overall survival analysis, and that's the data that the FDA will then look at to evaluate for full approval of the regimen. You may recall that the study itself was a 3-arm study. There's a control arm, could be a cytotoxic doublet or triplet without bevacizumab. And then there was 2 experimental arms. The main one was the encorafenib cetuximab with FOLFOX. That's the main one. But also there was a enrollment of the encorafenib cetuximab only. So a kind of a chemotherapy, cytotoxic chemotherapy-free regimen. So first, we confirmed that the response rates in the full population were consistent. We went from a 37% response rate from standard of care up to 65.7%, almost 2/3 of patients in that population. But as mentioned, the progression-free survival was really kind of the key message here. The progression-free survival went from 7.1 months with the standard of care chemotherapy. With the addition of EC to FOLFOX, that went up to 12.8 months. So, which is really a remarkable number for this population that traditionally does not respond as well to cytotoxic therapies. This was associated with a substantial improvement in overall survival. So the median overall survival went from 15.1 months to 30.3 months. So more than a doubling of the median overall survival, has a ratio of 0.49 and is statistically significant. So really kind of a compelling improvement in progression-free survival and overall survival. Now, this was even though patients in the control arm had access to encorafenib and cetuximab in the second line and beyond. And the majority of patients that received treatment did indeed receive those regimens. So it's this reiteration that it's not only that targeting BRAF improves survival, but how and when you do it appears to make a big difference, and really showing that EC is better when combined with first-line chemotherapy. We'll have more kind of subgroups looking at that. We'll be reporting out subgroup comparison with the different cytotoxic backbone regimens, for example, to further address some of those as well. The duration of response, we were able to see a kind of a doubling of the duration of response. Standard of care, duration of response for greater than 12 months was doubled with the addition of EC to FOLFOX. So I think really reiterating that durability. One of the other subgroups, I'd mentioned before that there was a chemotherapy-free regimen, cytotoxic chemotherapy-free regimen of EC alone in first line. And indeed, that had showed a improvement in overall survival as well. Qualitatively, it was not one of the pre-specified primary endpoints. But the standard of care, again, 15.1-month overall survival, and it was 19.5-month overall survival for EC in that setting. So really suggesting that if you have a patient that really just can't tolerate a cytotoxic chemotherapy, but may be able to tolerate a encorafenib cetuximab, that there may be a survival advantage by doing that, and that may be better than the chemotherapy alone. Although that remains really to be seen, as whether that same will apply for less fit patients. That obviously was not who was enrolled in this trial, but I think there's a lot of thought about could this data be utilized to help inform what we do for the more frail patients. So a few areas to go. I think as for subgroups, the subgroups that we looked at, the more traditional subgroups, number of organs involved, left versus right sided, all those really showed that this activity was uniform and seen across the board there. The remaining questions are about mechanisms of resistance. There's the biologic questions. I mean, this was a really profound synergy that we've seen clinically. So, chemo followed by EC is not nearly as good as chemo plus EC. So really interesting questions about why, and we'll look forward to some translational data to read out there. And then the second is that we have, this is with the FOLFIRI backbone, and there was an additional part of the study that was randomizing a standard of care versus EC FOLFIRI regimen. And so we'll be reporting out whether a first-line FOLFIRI is giving us a similar outcomes in that setting also. So that's another important component, because we know that not all patients are able to tolerate FOLFOX regimen or may have received it prior in the adjuvant setting. And so really being able to robustly show this potential benefit in FOLFIRI, we hope will come from these future studies.